Someone has said, and I think rightfully so, that living in the family is both exhilarating and exasperating. And there's not one of us here this morning who would disagree with that. Living in the family is both exhilarating and exasperating. Family life brings some of the greatest joys we can possibly know, and it also brings some of the greatest frustrations. Well, on this Mother's Day, on this beginning of the festival of the Christian home, I want to offer 4 characteristics of a healthy and loving family. 4 characteristics of healthy and loving families. First of all, in healthy and loving families, mothers are properly appreciated. In healthy and loving families, mothers are faithfully honored and appreciated. I came across recently the responses of 2nd graders to some questions about mothers. Listen to this. Why did God make mothers? She is the only one who knows where the Scotch tape is. How true that is, dads, as I am one. What ingredients are mothers made of? God makes mothers out of clouds and angel hair and everything nice in the world and 1 dab of mean. You have to let that one sink in. Why did God give you your mother and not some other mom? God knew she likes me a lot more than any other people's moms like me. Who's the boss at your house? My mom. You can tell by room inspection. She sees the stuff under the bed. What's the difference between moms and dads? Moms know how to talk to teachers without scaring them. And moms have magic. They make you feel better without medicine. Isn't that good? What does your mother do in her spare time? Mothers don't do spare time. To hear her tell it, she pays bills all day long. Yeah. If you could change one thing about your mom, what would it be? I would like for her to get rid of those invisible eyes in the back of her head. Well, the humor and insights of children aside, let me tell you 4 reasons I believe we honor and appreciate mothers. First of all, they generally make the greater sacrifices. I am a husband, I am a father, I am a grandfather. But I have no problem saying whatsoever that generally speaking, women, wives, and mothers make far more greater sacrifices than us fathers and husbands. I can say that after 43 years of being a husband, I have a 30-year-old daughter and a 20-year-old son. And I have no problem saying when I look up on our family life and I look up on families as a pastor, mothers make the greatest sacrifices. The truth is there are few men and few husbands who would want for one moment to change places with our wives and mothers. Secondly, they truly do love unconditionally. Now we say that. It's a common phrase, mothers love unconditionally. There's nothing like a mother's love. And it's absolutely true. No one loves us all our lives like our mothers. No one loves us when we're at our worst as well as when we're at our best like our mothers. No one loves like a mother. They're the great encouragers, thirdly. No one believes in us more strongly, encourages us more fully and faithfully than our mothers. And finally, they take our ups and downs to heart. Mothers take the ups and downs of the lives of their children to heart. And a word for us husbands and fathers. We can tell our wives, the mothers, all day long, don't worry about the children. And we are just speaking words to the wind. You cannot tell a mom not to worry about a son or a daughter. We recognize Mother's this day not because it's a national holiday, not so that the cards can be bought and given. We properly honor mothers because they make the greatest sacrifices. They love unconditionally. They truly are the great encouragers, and they take the ups and downs of our lives to heart. Secondly, I would say this morning that in the healthy and loving family, an effort is made to be kind and considerate. In the healthy, loving family, there is a sincere effort on the part of every family member to be kind and considerate. Someone said, and somewhat humorously, but sadly revealingly, home is where you go when you're tired of being polite to people. Home is where you go when you're tired of being polite to people. Or as the social theorists put it, most of us make it a habit to try and be respectful and considerate in our interactions outside the home. We seek to be apologetic when we hurt a friend's feelings. We ask our children to say thank you to the waitress or waiter at the restaurant. We understand the importance of an encouraging word to a coworker. We offer our help for a project needing completion. We put on our best countenance, our best self, our smiling and positive self when we find ourselves out in the community or in public, in some public social setting. Then we come home. Far too often we treat home as the place where they have to accept us no matter how we act. The place where we assume we're allowed to be our worst self. Now, I know, just like you know, there's no way to avoid some tension in the family. You see, we're all imperfect. There are no perfect husbands, there are no perfect wives, there are no perfect parents, there are no perfect children, there are no perfect brothers, no perfect sisters. And in spite of my feeling to the contrary sometimes as a grandfather, there are no perfect grandparents or grandchildren. So there's going to be some tension in the family. You put a bunch of imperfect people together in the family setting, and there's going to be some tension. But let me say this as clearly and carefully as I can. There is no reason in the world that we do not work as hard in the family to be kind and considerate and loving as we do everywhere else. It really ought to start there, shouldn't it? Remember the words of Paul, what he said about love? Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. Love doesn't dishonor others. It is never self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices in the truth. Let me tell you what that means. Those are great words. Let me tell you what they mean practically. They mean practically that I strive and you strive toward actions and attitudes in the family which honor those words. It means that we strive sincerely and faithfully towards attitudes and actions within the home that honor those words. So we should work toward being patient. It's not acceptable to accept impatience in the home. It's not acceptable for me to accept myself as impatient. And we work toward being kind. It's just not acceptable to accept unkindness in the home. And we work at being humble and considerate. We work, as Paul said, at being self-giving rather than self-seeking. We work at being slow to anger. Everybody's going to get angry here and there. But there's no reason that any of us in the family setting should not work at being slow to anger. And then we're forgiving. It's hard work in the family, isn't it? Put all us imperfect people together and it's hard work, but here's the issue. I should work in the family setting as hard as I work everywhere else to honor the love of Jesus Christ. I should work hard to be a patient, humble, kind, considerate, forgiving, self-giving husband and father and grandfather. And so should you in the family setting. It may be hard work, but it is the work the people of God do in the home. Thirdly, I would say to you that in healthy and loving families, there is a premium on listening, really listening to one another. I told this story last year, but it's just too good not to tell again, about the father who picked his son up at the daycare, and after picking his son up and putting him into the car seat, began to proceed to run a lot of errands. So he was rushing from this place to that place, to that place, to that place, and all the while he's getting a little faster in the car. And pretty soon he's on the interstate and he's exceeding the speed limit because he's trying to get to the next place before he gets home with the son. And sure enough, he looks back in the rearview mirror and there the whirling blue lights. He pulls over and the policeman pulls him over and he rolls down his window, gets his driver's license out. We've all been through this before. Gets his driver's license out, and just as he hands the policeman his driver's license, the little boy, now keep in mind, is sitting in the car seat. Just as he hands the policeman his driver's license, the little boy says, "Daddy, is this the idiot you were talking about?" I don't need to tell you. I don't think. They're watching. They're listening. And they're learning. What we say, they hear. What we do, they receive. Our actions, our attitudes, and our words are planted on the hearts and minds of children beyond what you and I realize. One family therapist has said there are 6 things that children learn from us. Listen to this. How to treat other people. Our children learn from watching us and listening to us how to treat other people in the world. Secondly, whether or not to be truthful. Where do children learn about truth or untruth? From us. Watching us and listening to us. How to handle disappointment. Where do children learn courage and faith and hope amidst the difficulties of life? Or that we rail against the disappointments of life. They learn it from us. How to accept our shortcomings and do better. Our children hear from us that we know we've got parts of our lives that need to change and we're willing to work on it. Do they see in us a desire to be a better person? Fifthly, they learn whether we are here in this life to be served or to serve. And finally, according to this therapist, they learn how to handle disagreement with maturity. 6 things that children learn from us. How to treat other people, whether or not to be truthful, how to handle disappointment, how to accept our shortcomings and do better, whether we're here in this life to be served or to serve, how to handle disagreement with maturity. And so the poet was right when he said, his little arms crept round my neck, and then I heard him say, for simple words I can't forget, for words that made me pray. They turned a mirror on my soul on secrets no one knew. They startled me, I hear them yet. He said, I'll be like you. Those are penetrating words, aren't they? Moms and dads. My daughter is going to be like me to some extent. And my son is going to be like me. And your sons and your daughters are going to be to some extent just like you. There's a 7th thing our children won't learn from us that I want to offer. I want to add to that list. Let me tell you what else they learn from us. They get their spiritual grounding or the lack thereof. The extent to which spiritual things matter to children, they learn from us. The role the Christian faith plays in their lives, they learn from us. The church takes very seriously that we should plant seeds of the kingdom of God in the lives of your children. The clergy of this church, the children's directors, the youth directors, we all take very seriously that we have a responsibility to plant seeds of God's love and the witness of Jesus Christ in your children. But listen to me very, very carefully here. The primary place that children learn about the love of God and about the witness of Jesus Christ is not in the church. It is in the home. The primary foundation for spiritual growth and for spiritual principle and for spiritual actions is in the home. Where do children learn whether the Bible matters or not? Whether it's ever opened or not? In the home. Where do children learn whether prayer is a priority or not? In the home. Where do the children learn whether worship matters or not, whether worship is a priority or not? In the home. Where do they learn whether God is at the center of our lives or not? In the home. Now, we want to join you every way we possibly can to empower your children toward love of God and faith in Jesus Christ. But you need to understand, as I need to understand as a parent, it starts and it develops and it evolves in the home. The final thing I would say this morning is that we all seek to take this menu of love as a call to our lives. This menu of love that Paul gives. That it began in the home, but that it spread out in the world. That love being patient ought to start in the home, but it ought to be lived out in the world. That love being kind ought to start in the home, but it ought to be lived out in the world. That love not being self-seeking but self-giving ought to start in the home, but it ought to be lived out in the world. That love that doesn't boast, that's not rude, not irritable, that's forgiving, it ought to start in the home, but it ought to spread out into the world, shouldn't it? Start in the home, spread into the world. I don't know about you, but there are days in the family that are some of my best days. And there are days in the family that are some of my worst days. But I want to share one other thing with you. And that is that when all is said and done and we leave this place this day, we take to heart this great call in the family life, and that is to listen. To listen. When we lived in Paducah, Kentucky, our daughter, who was then a preteen, said something to me I've never forgotten. It's one of those moments as a dad that you just, it's riveting to you. I'd come home from work and I was reading the paper, and you've been here, you've done this. Every mom and dad has done this, but us dads probably in particular. I'd come to my easy chair and I'm sitting and I'm reading the paper, and my daughter comes in. Again, she's preteen, she's 30 now, so this was a while ago, but I've never forgotten it. Never forgotten it. I'm reading the paper and my daughter comes in and she says, "Daddy, I want to tell you something." I said, "Okay, honey." Now keep in mind, I'm still holding the paper. This is in our den, so I'm reading the paper, I'm sitting in my easy chair, and my daughter comes in and says, "Daddy, I want to tell you something." And so I'm, "Sure, honey, tell me." And you can visualize, I got one eye on the paper and one eye on my daughter. I'm listening, or I'm hearing out of one ear. And she keeps talking for a moment, and then all of a sudden, again, I've never forgotten this. All of a sudden, she yanks the paper down. She's a preteen, yanks the paper down and says, "Daddy, listen to me. I am thankful to this day that my daughter felt she had the right to expect her father to listen to her." One family therapist says there are two problems with listening in the family home. One is we don't take the time. We're so busy rushing here and there that we don't take the time. And the second one is we really don't listen. We hear, but we don't listen. And he's got a wonderful resolution of that. You'll never forget this. You may not remember a thing I've said this morning. You won't forget this. This is his resolution to listening in the family home. Stop, look, and listen. I love my wife. And because I love my wife, if she wants to talk to me, I need to stop, and I need to look at her, and I need to listen. If my daughter wants to talk to me, I need to stop what I'm doing. I need to look at her, and I need to listen. If my son wants to talk to me, I need to stop, I need to look, I need to listen. If your wife, or your husband, or your son, or your daughter wants to talk to you, you need to listen. Stop, look, and listen. And it will make all the difference in family life. And there's another thing about communication, let me say quickly before we finish, and that is this. There's a flip side to listening, and that is sharing. In far too many homes, some people don't share. Some people don't open up. And let me tell you, husbands and wives and brothers and sisters and parents and children, wives aren't supposed to be mind readers. And husbands aren't supposed to be mind readers. And parents aren't supposed to be mind readers. And children aren't supposed to be mind readers. We should learn to share with one another, and then we should learn to listen to one another. So here's what I offer you on this Mother's Day, on the beginning of this Festival of the Christian Home 2012. In the healthy and loving home, mothers are truly loved, honored, and appreciated. Truly honored, loved, and appreciated. Secondly, while none of us are perfect, each of us ought to work at being kind and considerate and patient and self-giving. Honestly, work at it for the sake of our family. And remember, there's a high premium on listening and sharing in the healthy and loving family. And parents, let's remember this. They're watching. They're listening. They're learning. Our children are guided by us, including their spiritual development. May God help you and may God help me to be the kinds of husbands and wives, parents, children, brothers and sisters, grandparents and grandchildren, where the home is the most loving place on the face of the earth. Thanks be to God. Amen. Our affirmation of faith this morning is found in your bulletin. And let us stand as we affirm our faith together. We are not alone. We live in God's world. We believe in God, who has created and is creating, who has come in Jesus, the Word made flesh, to reconcile and make new, who works in us and others by the Spirit. We trust in God. We are called to be the church, to celebrate God's presence, to love and serve others, to seek justice and resist evil, to proclaim Jesus crucified and risen, our judge and our hope. In life, in death, in life beyond death, God is with us. We are not alone. Thanks be to God. Amen. Our hymn of dedication this morning is hymn number 92, For the Beauty of the Earth. If there are persons in this fellowship this morning who've not responded to the call of Jesus Christ in your life, as you know you ought and as you're being led, and who would in this service make a commitment to Christ as Lord of your life, we encourage you in that decision, support you in that decision. If you've not made a commitment for Christ to be Lord of your life, and this is the day to do that, again, we encourage you and support you in that decision. You can make it privately right where you are between you and God. You can come here to this altar and share it with us.